Hey guys, what's up? Darcy here at 6 Strings 9 Lives. Today we're going to celebrate two anniversaries. Anniversary number one, it was about 6 years ago exactly to the date, June 2018, that I started up this channel with not a lot of expectations, but here we are 6 years later, which I still can't believe that much time has went by. Far exceeded my expectations. I am so lucky to have met just so many like-minded, awesome people. Yeah, you got a few dickheads in there, but I mean, that's life. That's anywhere in life. But met so many great people. And I just want to thank you guys for watching, spending time with me, the comments, and subscribing to, that's fine too. Something I generally don't remind people to do. I mean, if you like what you see, you're going to subscribe anyways. So anyways, regardless of that, but the other anniversary is my 40 years with my favorite band. I always say I got a lot of favorite bands, but Judas Priest, if I had to pick one band, Judas Priest is my favorite band. And 40 years this year of me celebrating my first new release pickup, Defenders of the Faith, in 1984, and my first big concert, which I have still a few of those, Polaroids that I could show you here. Just a big turning point in my life for metal. I would say 82, 83, I dabbled in quite a bit of metal, but I think 1984 would be really the solid foundation of never looking back. I never wavered after that, but here's a few photos from that concert. Defenders of the Faith tour. They're not the greatest photos, but I'm sure glad I have them and kept them. But there's Rob and Glenn and KK and the Metallion in the background. So yeah, this was, like I said, my first big show, and just blown away at what I saw. There we go. There's one more. So I'm sure if you're a fan of the band and you're watching this video, you know exactly the concert and what was going on back then. Great White opened for them on the Canadian leg. I think mostly the Canadian leg. On this album, this is their debut album, just self-titled, Great White, which in my opinion, we'll throw in there, they've never topped this. This is absolute must-have. And I've met a few people that saw this same show in the States, but the opening act was Kick-Axe, and they were touring on this album. Kick-Axe is a Canadian band, and this is their debut album called Vices, which is absolute metal must-have. If you've never heard this for some strange reason, Kick-Axe, Vices, and they've never topped this album in my opinion either. They only have 3 or 4 albums, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to celebrate with an updated ranking of my favorite band. And, I do remind friends of mine who, have started up channels and things like that. They do ranking videos. The one thing I'm always tell myself is, you're doing this ranking for you. Don't be afraid to get a little shit in the comments, or what are you doing? Why did you put that? Are you nuts? Whatever. It's just, that's the one thing that's kept me going for 6 years, is I don't take things too to heart. I don't take things too seriously. There's a whole real life outside that door that we all have to deal with, and you don't need to deal with a bunch of shit on here. But we'll get right into this ranking, because there is 19 studio albums to cover. I think that my last one was 6 years old. I did it shortly, probably after Firepower came out. So 19 studio albums. I did read that Rob said, we just can't end our career on 19. We got to get that 20th studio album. The only thing in my mind is they can't wait 6 years. I think they got to condense that and go maybe 3 to 4 years maximum. But I do hope there is one more Judas Priest album, and maybe a few more KK's Priest album, which I'm spinning in the background, which will mention all these names here. But let's start off with... where are we here? Let's start off with the ranking. We're going to go from 19 all the way to my favorite. I got to say, probably the bottom 5 are my least spun albums. There is only one album that I outright kind of, well, I dislike it, and that will be number 19. I'm going to show you that one. But then once you get to number 14 to 1, man, there's just some pure gold there. But let's start off with number 19, 14th overall studio album, second and last to feature Ripper Owens on vocals. This is Demolition. I'll pull this out. Only album to be released on Atlantic Records. I think overseas it was too. It could be SPV, Steamhammer. I don't remember. But Demolition, just my least favorite. 2001. There's other bands doing so much better at the time. Even Iron Maiden came back 2000 with Brave New World, things like that. But I just didn't like the sound on this one. But there is some good tracks, and there's good tracks on all of these, and those I'll mention as I go. But Machine Man, One on One, definitely great tracks, and Feed on Me would be another one that would jump out at me. But yeah, shortly after that, this is 2001. Rob's back in 05, which we'll get to that, but that is my number 19 from 2001. Coming in at number 18 is their first overall studio album, 1974's Rock-a-Rolla. Now this one, I don't dislike this album. Over the years, I've tried to get myself to like it more, but it's not fully, it hasn't fully clicked with me that I just absolutely love it. But always love the track One for the Road, the title track Rock-a-Rolla. Never Satisfied, another great track too. This is really the period, where they haven't realized their, full potential, their sound. It's there's hints of it on here, but you have to wait till the next album till that happens. But there's my number 18, Rock-a-Rolla, 1974. So yeah, that's 50 years of recording right there, and like I said, 40 years for me. But I still think I discovered Judas Priest in 1982 just by the airplay that You Got Another Thing Coming had, and then, like I said, my first new release in 84. So on to, where are we here? Number 17. Now this one, I like it way more than I did when it first came out. I think back in 1997, which I was already waiting, 7 years for an album, but coming in at number 17 is Jugulator. It definitely doesn't mean this is a shit album, but this is a big change for a longtime Judas Priest fan. This is probably, it is their heaviest album. I would absolutely, some Mark Wilkinson artwork on the front here. And they were dropped from Columbia, Sony. This one was released by CMC International in North America, and then SPV Steamhammer in the rest of the world, I believe. And but yeah, I'm a big Rob Halford fan, I admit that, and it was a little bit of a shock of this one, but again, some really good tracks. Bloodstain for sure. Where are we here? Bullet Train, great track. But my favorite on this album, and I wish they would play this live, is Cathedral Spires. Absolute top 20 Judas Priest song for me, for sure. That's the one thing that does bother me about Judas Priest. They don't acknowledge the Ripper era. There is 2 really good live albums from that era also. That does kind of piss me off. I know Iron Maiden are really good at honoring, the Blaze era, Paul, reissuing albums, letting people hear the music, and I think the same service should be done for Jugulator and Demolition, even if they're lower on the totem pole. But I know a lot of people love this album. I just don't love it as much as you, but there is lots to love on here. But there is my number 17. That's their 13th overall studio album from 97. Here's another one that I do see get more love than I'll give it to today, but some great tracks. Production bothers me a bit on this album. It's just, something's missing. But here's my number 16, 17th overall studio album, 2014's Redeemer of Souls. First one to feature Richie Faulkner, but at this point, his full potential is definitely not realized. And you know the couple albums that come after this, which we'll talk about today here shortly. But yeah, so first not to feature KK Downing and first to feature Richie Faulkner. There's some really good tracks on here, but I have mentioned it. Several people have mentioned that the production, I think it's Mike Exner and Exeter, or whatever his name is, and Glenn Tipton did the production on this. Rob's vocals are not super strong on here. I think they struggle a bit in areas, but some tracks that jump out at me for sure. Dragonaut, good way to open up the album. Halls of Valhalla. March of the Damned is kind of a corny, lyrically corny rocker, but I really love the music to it. It's pretty cool. And then you got your typical, Judas Priest songs, like the metal songs like Metalizer and Battle Cry. But yeah, there is my, what did I say, number 16. And yeah, we had to wait 6 years for this one too. This was, you had a Nostradamus, and then 6 years later for Redeemer of Souls. All right, coming in at number 15 is their 15th overall studio album and the return of Rob Halford. This is 2005's Angel of Retribution. Now, at the time, I was super excited that Rob Halford was back. And I think in 2005, I was really happy with this album. But over the years, this one hasn't aged as well for me. But there, again, some great tracks. And production-wise, working with Roy Z on this one, which actually both Bruce Dickinson and Rob Halford were working with Roy Z at around, those times. They even did a duet on Rob's album called The One You Love to Hate. But anyways, tracks, starts off with a great track, Judas Rising, which is, to me, probably the best track on the album. And then you got even Hellrider would be another one that sticks out to me as being one of my favorites. And Angel, kind of a metal ballad too. And then ending the album with the kind of the long drawn out song called Loch Ness. But so there's my number 15, Angel of Retribution from 2005. And when Rob did leave the band, he was gone for 15 years. There is some three solo albums. If you've never heard some of Rob's solo stuff like Resurrection or Crucible, highly recommend those two. Definitely shown those on my channel too. Check those out. All right, where are we? Number 14. Coming in at number 14, and an album that generally on a lot of rankings you would have already saw, but not on this one. The music on here is the guitar work that is absolutely superb. And you already know what I'm probably going to hold up is the hour and 42-minute concept album from 2008, Nostradamus. Got to see them on this tour, actually, and Testament opened up for them. And at the time, it was kind of a weird pairing, I thought, but what a great show it was. The set list was basically what you would have got on A Touch of Evil, that live disc. But man, there are some great tracks on here. And yeah, I fully do understand the whole hour and 42 minutes sitting through this. It's like, watching a movie, but you're just listening to a movie but there is some killer stuff on here. Tracks, if I had to tell you, go check out Prophecy for sure. Revelations. Actually, they played War and Death, I think, on that live disc. Visions, Alone and Visions are just worth the price of admission right there. Just the soloing on here. If you just isolated all the guitar work, but Rob sounds great on here too. Drums, bass, the whole thing. You always got Ian Hill and Scott Travis holding down the fort. I mean, for now anyways, since Scott joined in 90. But yeah, I'd say, if you can throw this on, give it another whirl, see if it works. But you know what? I think I'm happy with where I put this one at number 14. Not something I go back to often, but when I do, I really do enjoy it. All right, on to here. Let's grab another little bit of a stack here. Coming in at number 13, 11th overall studio album. And one that, yeah, it catches a little bit of shit here and there, but I enjoy this album for sure. This is coming in number 13 is Ram It Down, 11th overall studio album, 1988. You probably know the story about when Turbo came out, they were trying to make a double album called Twin Turbos. So I think most of this is leftover material from that. Now, the Johnny B. Good cover song, if you could just eliminate this from that album and just skip it, I mean, there's some great stuff on here. Definitely the computer drums is a bit of, it's definitely talked about. It's not the perfect sound, but it's grown on me over the years. I even love this when it came out. Ram It Down, the title track, is probably one of the heaviest songs Judas Priest has ever done. If you break it down, the song Heavy Metal, I love the lyrics to that. 10,000 lights come blazing down with razor sharp precision. I think it's so cool. And one of my all-time favorite Judas Priest songs is on this album, Blood Red Skies. It's epic. I love it. And I'm a rocker, things like that. And yeah, just, let it go on Johnny B. Good. Just, grab some white out and just white it out and just pretend it's not on here. But there is some good shit on this album. Love the album cover. So there is my number 13. And before I set this one down, I'll tell you what, Rob's vocal performance on this album, isolate those vocals, man. You'll be blown away. There it is, number 13. Coming in at number 12, we just talked about twin turbos. Let's talk about a single turbo. This is coming in number 12. And again, I've always liked this album. I didn't even mind the change. This would have been my second new release, so I was really excited to pick this up, after seeing Judas Priest first, or for my first time live, things like that. So 10th overall studio album. This is my original copy. There's since been a reissue updated for the 30th anniversary of this. But yeah, Turbo Lover, the guitar synth and all that. I just think it's great. You do have the kind of the corny lyrics with Private Property or Parental Guidance and stuff like that. Locked In is an awesome track. But I'd say, man, on the B-side, another one of my all-time favorite Priest songs is Out in the Cold. That is up there with Blood Red Skies for sure. And the music on songs for Wild Nights, Hot and Crazy Days, not bad at all, but Reckless to end this album. That is one of my favorite tracks. So there is my number 12, Turbo. And coming in at number 11, this is another one that catches a lot of shit, but I'm going to say, okay, I can understand some of it, but overall, I've always loved this album because it actually contains two of my favorite Judas Priest tracks, which we will mention, and I'm going to show you the cover that I grew up with. This is my number 11, 7th overall studio album from 1981 called Point of Entry. You guys probably know exactly what the European cover looks like. I don't need to hold it up, but yeah, this one was sandwiched in between British Steel and Screaming for Vengeance. Two masterpieces, and they tried a more radio-friendly approach on this album. It worked on a few things, like songs like Heading Out to the Highway, which as much as it's played or overplayed, I still think it's a great song. And then you got a few songs that are, not as appealing, like You Say Yes or Hot Rockin'. But my favorite tracks, the two tracks I'm talking about, are Desert Plains and Solar Angels. Absolutely love those tracks. Even On the Run to wrap it up. Another good one too. So I understand both points of view. I understand if you're not a big fan of it, and I do understand if you really enjoy this album. It's definitely stripped down a bit from what came before it and what came after it. There's not as much metal in it, but more hard rock than metal, you could say. But still, good album. Um, Nonetheless, that is my number 11. Top 10 coming in at number 10, fifth overall studio album, and second from the year 1978. So whether this was a bunch of tracks they had, and this is kind of the leftover to make the second album, but this is Killing Machine. This is a reissue. I grew up knowing this album as Hellbent for Leather, which you probably know that story. You got second appearance of this classic logo, I think. Yeah, that's right, because it appeared on Stained Class first. You know, kind of got that razor jagged logo. But this one, for me, I definitely have seen it higher. I've always said, also, let me grab a quick drink there. I'm just talking too much, but I've talked about when an entry point to a band or an album is, and definitely seen this one higher or lower, but perfect at number 10 for me. This is one that I think before I had it a couple of notches down, but just playing it over and over the past month. Great song. Delivering the Goods is a great track. Evening Star, always love that track too. The title track, well, actually there's two title tracks. There's one for the version I grew up with, Hellbent for Leather. Sorry, I'm singing it almost, but then great tracks and a cover song like The Green Manalishi. I mean, Judas Priest made it their own. Love it. And a couple other great tracks are Killing Machine, Running Wild, and always like the kind of ballady Before the Dawn. But there is my number 10, Killing Machine. Coming in at number 9, second overall studio album, 1976, Sad Wings of Destiny. Always love this album, artwork. I love, and there's the other kind of what I would call their classic logo. Starting to really find that Judas Priest sound. Standout tracks on here for sure would be Tyrant. Of course, Victim of Changes. How can you not have that on your list? That is one of my, I think I did a list a few years back, and that was my favorite track from this album. I did a list of favorite Judas Priest songs, one from each album, Victim of Changes, and of course, Ripper. Another great track too, Genocide. But yeah, Victim of Changes and Tyrant would be the standouts for me on this for sure. And yeah, just at the time, I'd say 76, a groundbreaking album, really. All right, moving along, number 8. This is one that has also moved up the ladder over the years for me. My number 8 is their third overall studio album from 1977, Sin After Sin, containing another one of my favorite Judas Priest tracks, which is Starbreaker. I think I like the live version better on Unleashed in the East, but regardless, great track. And this one, you got to dig around a little bit. This has got a great variety if you're, newer to the band. But starting off with Sinner, Diamonds and Rust, Starbreaker, like I've already mentioned. Let Us Call for the Priest, Raw Deal, Let Us Pray. I mean, the guitar work on there is awesome. And then wrapping it up with Dissident Aggressor, which, later Slayer covered on South of Heaven. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did on that one. But yeah, there it is. My number 8, 1977, Sin After Sin. What do we got? 7 left. And here's where that kind of classic razor sharp Judas Priest logo appeared. And that is my number 7, fourth overall studio album from the beginning of 1978. So this is the first album. This one was released in February, and Killing Machine was towards the end of the year, probably November or something like that. But here's just a classic must-have Judas Priest album. Lots of standout tracks here, and really heavy for its time too. I'd say 78, definitely. Exciter, The cover of Better by You, Better Than Me, I always enjoyed that. The title track in Saints in Hell, which they actually, I don't know if they played it on this tour, but they did do Saints in Hell on their 50th, the tour before Invincible Shield. Anyways, Savage, great track, and of course, Beyond the Realms of Death. Have to mention that track for sure. One of my all-time favorites. But there it is, number 7, Stained Class. That one featured Les Binks on drums. All right, on to the top 6. This one, I've said before in past videos that I'm not going to say it's not overrated, but the title track really sets the pace, or how should I put that? The title track to me is still the best track, and then after that, it's, you know, it goes down a bit, but I'm not saying it should in any shape or form, but definitely the title track, and you probably already know what I'm talking about. Here's my number 6, 12th overall studio album, 1990. Last to feature Rob Halford till 2005, which we've already mentioned. This is Painkiller. And yeah, it's a metal classic. There's no doubt about it. Heavier sound, big jump from Ram It Down. The production, the guitar tone on here is just, I don't know how to, it's just fierce. And the soloing, the back and forth, the dual leads from KK and Glenn. I mean, obviously, you know that if you're a fan of Judas Priest, but yeah, Painkiller. And then you jump into a couple other, my favorite tracks would be, sorry, where are we here? Metal Meltdown, Nightcrawler, not bad at all. Touch of Evil, that is another one of my favorites. But a couple tracks like Battle Hymn, or One Shot at Glory, it's okay. But Painkiller, I mean, that is just a universal metal song that just, to me, never gets old. And that's what I'm kind of touching on. But there is my number 6, Painkiller from 1990. And then after that, yeah, like I said before, we didn't see a new Judas Priest album for 7 years later with, the first to feature Ripper on Jugulator. So top 5, the one thing I wanted to do before I, press the record button is to make sure that I was not overreacting or underreacting with the 2 new Judas Priest albums. Where do they really fit for me in the scheme of things? And I am absolutely comfortable with the way I got these. But here's my number 5, 18th overall studio album, 2018. We gave it away. Second to feature Richie Faulkner. This is Firepower. One of my favorite Judas Priest artworks. Fantastic. And obviously one of my favorite albums. And I had mentioned earlier that on Redeemer of Souls, I don't think at that point Richie had a massive amount of contribution as far as riffs and soloing and things like that. Obviously had some contribution, but this is where he and the Richie injection button, you could tell. And this, shortly after this came out, it was announced that Glenn was battling Parkinson's disease and things like that. So, if you put 2 and 2 together, you know that Richie was super involved in this, and even on the next or the newest album too. But title track, I think what was the first single on this was Lightning Strike, I think. But yeah, that, Firepower, Evil Never Dies, great track. Rob's vocals are phenomenal. The drumming on these 2 latest albums too, Scott Travis, awesome. Involved with, at this point, Tom Allum is back co-producing with Andy Sneap. So production is really good, solid, it's, of course, there's layers and things like that, but it's not overdone. But my favorite track on here is Never the Heroes. And for sure, what I would have ended this album on is No Surrender, but it's actually the 3rd last track. I love that track. Rise from Ruins, Flamethrower, kind of bits and pieces of the whole career thrown into this album. But just the one critique, a little too long. I would have shaved off Lone Wolf and Sea of Red, and I would have just left this album as a 11 or 12 tracks instead of 14, but that's just a minor complaint. But yeah, Never the Heroes, what a track that is. There is my number 5. And number 4, here's number 4, 19th overall studio album, and my big 40-year celebration with this band. And I'm happy to say this is the perfect spot for me for Invincible Shield. This has been my most played record of 2024 so far, and as far as my pickups go for new releases, there's not, I'm going to say there's 1 or 2 that come close, but nothing has topped this yet for me. I do like this artwork. I think it's just so rallying, so metal, and whatever. If there's some corniness in there, don't care. But so, and I'm hoping to be able to go see them. There's no dates announced that are really close to me yet, but I'm confident that I will be able to see them on this tour. And that's really important to me because I want to celebrate the 40 years with, you know, seeing them on the Defenders tour and then on the Invincible Shield tour. But first single was, first song that they put out was, what did they put out first? Was it Panic Attack? But I absolutely love Panic Attack. I love the intro to Panic Attack, that even almost turbo keyboardy vibes. It gave you a kind of a false sense of security, like you're thinking, what's going on here? And then boom, right into Panic Attack. Great track. Serpent and the King, great speedy heavy track. Title track, not bad. I really enjoy Gates of Hell. That's just a kind of like a metal anthem to me. And I don't count that bonus track stuff. This is the album with just the regular tracks on it. But as far as this is a 3/4 really strong album. And then Escape from Reality, Sons of Thunder, and Giants in the Sky. I think they are the last 3 tracks for a reason. But in between, Trial by Fire, Crown of Horns, like I already mentioned, Gates of Hell, As God Is My Witness, which has, that track has more like a Hard as Iron feel. That is a good track for sure too. But yeah, there's my number 4. And let's hope there is a 20th studio album. So maybe in 3 or 4 years from now, we will update the Judas Priest ranking and celebrate them one more time. But here's the top 3. Coming in at number 3, 6th overall studio album. First to feature Dave Holland on drums for, I think, 5 albums. I guess you can count Ram It Down, but he never really, that was more computer generated stuff. But, and I'll say, you know what? Dave Holland was a good drummer. He absolutely held these guys together, and that was his job. And not super flashy or anything like that, but just thought I'd throw that in there. So here is my number 3, British Steel. This is one that I play quite often. You know the album, might even be one of your favorites too, which make sure, if you're watching, you lay down in the comments, give me your top 5, give me your top 19. Or if you do videos and you've already ranked them, put a link to your video too. Let's share it with everybody. But yeah, Breaking the Law, played, overplayed, don't care, love it. Rapid Fire, another great song. Metal Gods. Grinder, that riff has been super influential to many bands. I mean, dun, 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 you know, that start, it's just classic. And then Living After Midnight, I love the track You Don't Have to Be Old to Be Wise. That is one of my favorite. And then The Rage Stealer. There's just nothing weak on this album. Yeah, there it is, number 3. Coming in at number 2, I'd mentioned earlier that I discovered Judas Priest on a Song, which came on this album. This is my number 2, 8th overall studio album. And yeah, I discovered a band after 8 albums, so it was cool at the time that you got to backtrack and pick up those other albums. But there it is, Screaming for Vengeance, coming in at number 2. Pretty much love the whole album. Devil's Child is one of my all-time favorite Judas Priest tracks. The Hellion, Into the Electric Eye, awesome. Bloodstone, Take These Chains, the title track, Screaming for Vengeance. one of the heaviest Judas Priest tracks, especially at the time, and the super catchy, radio friendly, whatever you want to say, You Got Another Thing Coming. That one never gets old for me either. Here's my original copy. But there it is, number 2. Only leaving one, which you might have saw that coming already. But Defenders of the Faith, number 1. And I had mentioned too that when you discover a band on a certain album, it means a lot to you. There's so many memories that come back with this album. And, and new memories that I want to make going to see them 40 years later in my life, which at the time you're not thinking about, oh, I can't wait to see Judas Priest in 2024. You're not thinking that way, but love the album cover. Love this album. Yeah, love that they're playing Love Bites live. That is cool because I've always loved that track. A lot of love going on, but Freewheel Burning, watching that video in Canada's Much Music, I mean, just over and over, and seeing Rob and all those laser lights pointing. He's got his leather cap on, the dual guitars from KK and Glenn just gives me chills just talking about it. But and of course you got the great tracks like The Sentinel, Eat Me Alive, these kind of hidden agenda lyrics. You dig into them. I mean, they're pretty awesome. Some heads are going to roll. And wrapping it up with, hey, heavy duty Defenders of the Faith. But there's my number 1. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for 6 years of fun. I'm not going anywhere. I will be back sharing metal and the love of metal with you, hopefully on a weekly basis like I do. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed that one. And until next time, stay heavy duty.